On first impressions, the magnitude of the artwork that we are looking at may not be entirely clear. This is The Nightmare by Henry Fuseli, a piece of art with many meanings. At first we can see a woman lying unconscious on a bed. A grotesque creature sits on her chest, and in the background we can see a horse with glowing eyes that bursts through the darkness. But nothing here is literal. This is a visualization of the mind under attack, and we're going to be diving deep into this painting over this video. If you enjoy it, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now this image, this piece of art, is called The Nightmare and was created by Henry Fuseli in 1781. And this is an image which tells a deep tale, an image which can be seen in many different ways. One of the meanings for this which I've seen, or I perceive this potentially to show, is sleep paralysis. We can see that long before psychology had a language for it, a meaning for it, Fuseli simply painted sleep paralysis with terrifying accuracy. If you've ever had this, as many people have, it could be argued this is somewhat what it is like. We can see simply the woman is immobile. This is very clear from her limp and relaxed body. She's obviously not moving. We can see as well that there is pressure on her chest. This is shown by the demon, right? The incubus. And we can see hallucinations which arguably are shown through the horse. And it could be argued that the woman, or the figure being a woman, in this time, shows an element of vulnerability and fear, right? Or potential vulnerability here. And I think this shows a few things. I think there are a few meanings for this. It could argue that the mind can betray you at any point, because to some extent this is something that many people have faced. It's something that you may have had before sleep paralysis, and it's something which you can't control, and it absolutely can be a terrifying experience. It's something that you can't really do anything about. However, it's not real, right? It's not real. So the fact that he's able to portray this meaning, this perception so clearly, is interesting, because these are all things in the woman's mind in this interpretation, but they are all very real in terms of the scene. Now there are so many different interpretations here. I think you can see this in so many different ways. Now you could also see the demon here, the incubus, as being a symbol of desire, right? Repressed desire. And there's many ways that we can interpret this in and of itself. So it's important to understand this, because in European folklore, especially at this time, an incubus could be a representation of many things. Perhaps in this instance, forbidden or unspoken sexuality. We can also see that in an era obsessed with control and purity and restraint, Fuseli paints something a bit deeper, a bit darker. The desire is shown as something that invades when it is denied its expression. In that perception, the horror isn't the desire, if we're looking at it through this angle. It's simply the loss of agency, yet again, in the fact that the woman is not in control of the situation here. To some extent, it could be perceived as the scary demon and the horses. So, it's very interesting. It's also interesting to contrast this with the relaxed background. We can see, obviously, what is a bed. We can see the woman is dressed somewhat elegantly. But even despite this, we are seeing the demons and the monsters really taking hold of the scene here. And I think that is a great representation of that, if that is the meaning, because, I think to any extent this image does show an uncontrolled mind. Because again, the woman is not in control of this, be it a repression, be it a sleep paralysis demon. She can't control the situation. So we're seeing a lovely scene here, a relatively elegant bed and sheets and all of these things. But despite this, irrespective of who she may be in her elegant clothes and room, she can't control these things. And this shows that this can somewhat filter through any element of society. Now we've got to look into the background, because we have the horse, and the horse is often, I think, misunderstood. Now, the nightmare is a word in and of itself that can be divided into two. We've got the night, which is the darkness, and the mare, which is a spirit that suffers or suffocates sleepers. Now, the horse, therefore, is not random. It's a linguistic monster which is made of flesh, represented in a horse. Its bulging eyes and unnatural presence represent a panic, the racing mind and the thoughts that cannot be shut off. It emerges out of nowhere from the pure blackness and simply rears its scary and ugly head, as many thoughts often do. This is a painting which can be seen in many different ways. This is a painting of rebellion. This is a painting which shows that human minds are often not able to be controlled. You see, at this time, we were dealing with Romanticism versus Enlightenment, and Enlightenment told us that humans are rational, the mind is controllable, and reason conquers fear in most instances. However, Fuseli says no. The mind is like a haunted house. And at some points, other things can take over. The demon can take over. Monsters can take over, irrespective, again, of who you are. I think that's one interesting way to perceive this. And in this instance, in this artwork, we can see that the woman is passive, she's exposed, and ultimately she's powerless. She can't do anything. This reflects a few things. It shows many things. I think this shows the fear of losing control over your own body, as obviously the woman has done. The fear of vulnerability is a big thing, because again, the woman depicts somewhat innocence, right? She looks elegant, she looks well dressed to some extent, but again, she's still vulnerable, even in her own bed, in her own house. And I think this painting forces the viewer into an interesting yet arguably uncomfortable role. They're not a hero, they're not a victim, they're simply a witness to what is going on here. Understanding this, it's very interesting because you can only watch. You don't have any control over the scene. Neither does she, to a large extent. These are forces which control the painting, which control the narrative, and which control her trapped in it. They are in charge, and they're staring at us, especially this one, as if to say we are catching them out, right? The stare shows that the monster does not appear to be fearful to look at us. The monster is very conscious of what it's doing. Its back turned away from us, arguably hiding its intentions, but more than happy to show its face. And the horse simply shows its face, which arguably is scary enough. What is the rest of the horse doing behind the scenes? Again, a great representation for thoughts, a great representation for the open mind. Now, this creature is the most fascinating, and this is the one which I think we can take so much from. I think the incubus sat on her is a symbol of the fact that humans, despite the fact that we want to believe we are very sovereign and we want to believe that we're in control of ourselves, we have factors that we can't control, and we have things that control us. Now, in this image, it's represented by a monster, a demon. But this can be many things, and tie this into your own modern life. This can be fears about work or school or college. This can be fears about how you're perceived. This can be... all of these things often are a weight on people's chest, as this monster is to the woman. I think in that context, the back being turned away from us is like how society doesn't necessarily tell us what to do or how to do it. It just looks at us and judges, as this creature is looking at us in this image. Maybe I'm taking this from a very modern perspective. Maybe I'm looking at this painting very wrong. I see this as a sleep paralysis monster. I see this potentially as a societal representation of the time, but I can also see this painting, as I like to do many times. You know, some people may like it, some people may not. I always like to look at these paintings through a modern lens, and I think this painting, yet again, is one that's still relevant. People still have, obviously, fears. People still have things that play on their mind, and I think, again, people, to some extent, their own individual sovereignty is not as strong as they think, as there's always something crushing your chest and telling you what to do. So maybe you guys see the same meanings that I do, maybe you don't. As I always say, this is art, and both the beautiful and the terrible thing about that is we can't entirely know what the meaning is. But that's just some takeaways that I had when looking at this piece of art. So do let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your time, guys, and goodbye for now.